I made it my personal mission every day to round on every victim, every day. It was a lot easier for me to have conversations with them because I was there, at least in my mind, because I could relate to what happened.
Tracy Szymanski is the Director of Guest Services at Sunrise Hospital. She is also a 1 October survivor.
So Jason Aldean started this third song, and we were contemplating leaving, actually, and we heard what we thought were fireworks. So we kind of stood up and started packing our chairs, and all of a sudden the security officer who was off to our right started screaming, "Turn around, run the other way, active shooter." We ran out the back and behind the bleachers, through all of the food vendors, and then exited off to the side street and started running towards Hooters. As I was walking, I called one of our administrators and said, you know, everybody knew I was going to the concert. It's something I talk about leading up to it every year. So everybody knew I was going, and I said, you know, I'm at the concert. If I've seen 10 people, I know I've seen more than 100, and we're gonna get hit pretty hard.
Szymanski went straight to the hospital. A coworker picked her up.
I checked in at the Incident Command Center, and I went down to the emergency room to see what I could do to help. And I had no idea and was not prepared for what I saw.
Staff at Sunrise Hospital treated more than 200 people that night. Szymanski worked with families and patients to help make them comfortable.
That's where I got my healing from. I tried not to make conversations about me, but at the same time, we were all comforting each other.
So when something like October 1, the event happens, do you have to be a first responder or someone at the concert to be affected by it?
I would think that it would be very difficult to find someone who was not affected by it. There was so much media coverage, and it was such a large tragedy, it impacted so many people that were there, but there were people who knew somebody there, who worked with somebody who was there or had a family member there, worked there. It would be hard to find, I think, people who weren't affected.
We talk so much about the first responders. Angela, this is something, not everybody who responded that night is considered a first responder. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that?
Do you mean as in the civilian heroes that helped?
Civilian heroes, but also some of even the 911 calls.
Yeah, and I consider them our first responders. They're the ones who take the initial calls. So they're the ones that initially knew something was going on.
We hear something over the radio. One of our units over the radio said that he heard shots fired. At the time, we're like, okay. He's like, dispatch, do you have any calls? We didn't have any when he said shots fired, but within 60 seconds, our call volume just went through the roof.
Letha Lofton was among those working in the Las Vegas Fire 911 Communications Center on the night of 1 October.
We're trained to stay on that line to help people. We're trained to help people until the paramedics get there. But when you have a flood of calls coming in and all of these people are injured and you don't want to hang up, so we have to give them basic instructions like how to control the bleeding, or I need to know where you are, and they're battling with themselves, with their morals, like, do I hang up this phone because I have this other person who we don't know what's wrong with them. We don't know if they're shot. And then we still have the rest of the valley. We still have all of Las Vegas that's calling in 911. So those are the things that they went through that night. A lot of fear, a lot of doubt, a lot of hurt, pain. I don't think, because I was in autopilot mode, which I think a lot of us were, we didn't realize the impact of it, how it affected us until when I pulled up at home and I sat in my car and I cried for about an hour.
Counseling and peer support were made available, but Lofton says certain calls that used to be standard can still trigger an emotional response.
We helped as many people as we could. There's 22,000 people there. For those other people, they made it. So we helped some people that we couldn't help. Yes, it hurts. but that's a part of our job. We do the best that we can do.
What would you say are the signs of someone who is struggling, since it is so widespread and we all know someone who knows someone, some of us closer than others? What are those signs? What should we be looking for?
If you're looking strictly down the PTSD sort of guidelines, you're looking for, I mean, I think stereotypically it's, you know, flashbacks and bad dreams of the incident. And I think that's the one that if we don't see that, we don't really think a lot is going on. But there are issues like chronic pain is actually one of the precursors to PTSD. There's a lot of avoidance, what we call a hyperstartle response, so somebody jumps to a noise or things like that. Sort of the difficult part with PTSD is that there are so many different types of triggers for it, and they're so small, there's no way to say, here's X, Y, and Z to do to prevent it. It can be anything associated with any of the senses. So you hear a song that was played, not even that night, but by that artist, a smell of food that was cooking in the background, the smell of grass. I mean, it can be any number of things that just out of the blue can kind of trigger it.
Wow. Is that something that you've experienced at Las Vegas Fire in terms of the first responders that were there that night coming saying, I need some time off, there are some triggers, it's getting too difficult to work?
Well, I think it's almost the opposite. I think it's what you were speaking to. People want to just move on and past it, even though it's not going to go away. You know, so they try to jump right back in it. I mean, but for a lot of our folks, for fire, military, police, all of us want to just suck it up and soldier on and pretend like nothing's wrong. You know, where in the meantime, you know, they're suffering.
The police department has opened up a window that allows chaplains to come and be a resource for the officers, for other employees of Metro, and for their families.
Pastor Dean Sanner is the lead chaplain for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department's Police Chaplain Program. Chaplains, like Sanner, work hand in hand with the department's Police Employee Assistance Program, or PEAP, offering comfort, advice, and counseling to officers and their families who are affected by tragedy.
It's a sacred privilege, too, because we're in their lives. They allow us in their lives. We go to briefings, you know, we ride along, we talk to the officers and the supervisors, anybody that needs help, but it's all confidential. But when they open that window and open that door, it's something that they don't open to just anybody.
The program started in 2005 with about 5 members of local clergy who went through a specialized training program. Now there are almost 24 chaplains. They are on call 24 hours a day. All of them are volunteers.
Well, in October 1, obviously it was a traumatic night for everybody. We had many police chaplains that were out. I was out all night long at hospitals. Then we went over to the Metro headquarters. Since then, part of what we do is we continue to be visible and available. Police officers keep everything to themselves. And unfortunately, when they do that, it starts to build up, and that's what results in the high suicide rate for officers. We're trying to break that culture or change that culture in the department to basically let officers know, hey, if you're getting overwhelmed, you're human. If you deal with this in a healthy way, the healthy way is by talking about it. The healthy way is by admitting the truth about it and admitting how it's affecting you. And if you do that, there is help and there is hope. And that's what we want people to know. There's hope for dealing with the trauma and the difficulties that the officers face, and we want to be there as a support.